So I hope you've all had a good lunch, because I'm going to give you some animation pudding. Right, so hey, first joke of the day. Okay, is this working? Okay, so I want to give you a little bit of background on who I am. Started in the industry about 14 years ago. Worked on a bunch of games, some, probably a lot of them you won't know, punctuated by Assassin's Creed in 2005. Moved back to England. Worked on another couple of games that you might or might not know, and then ended up moving back to Canada, working at Ubisoft Toronto to be the animation director on Splinter Cell Blacklist. Gratuitous baby picture there. Okay, so I want to give you a brief overview of what I'm going to talk about today. So I'm going to start with the evolution of the animation on Blacklist, giving you some context into some of the decisions that we made. Then I want to talk a little about the involvement of our tactical coordinator and where he helped us out, which will lead me into an overview of some of the methods we used and some of the tools. From there I want to talk about the concept that we had of everything in motion, and how that defines some of Sam's movements, which should help define and develop our animation contrast system. And how that helped with player choice. And then you can't talk about Splinter Cell without talking about the AI, so I'll go into some of the things that we did there. Okay, right, so this was the 6th game in the Splinter Cell franchise. It was already established, but even though that was the case, we still had to go ahead and define what we were going to do for Blacklist. And this was the first game out of Ubisoft Toronto, and they wanted to prove something. So we want to make a strong first impression to headquarters. So what I'm going to do is I want to show you, give you some context into where we started from. This is the comm video that has only ever been seen internally at Ubisoft. And it's one of the ways that Ubisoft will greenlight a project. Now, with Ubisoft Toronto being a brand new studio, we didn't want to just create a pre-rendered footage. We decided to go and create a playable demo using the previous Splinter Cell as a base. So I'm just going to go ahead and show that. Okay, so it was a pretty good technical achievement. Basically, from a bunch of people that hadn't really worked together, we managed to get a playable demo up and running. And headquarters passed us to go to the next stage. But the thing is we didn't feel like it was a Splinter Cell we wanted to make. It wasn't hitting the right tone. We wanted to return Splinter Cell to its stealth roots, and think more kind of Hurt Locker than Mission Impossible. So we wanted to take some of the action out of there. The studio supported us wholeheartedly, but with that came like a new animation mandate. So there was a renewed focus on the fluidity of animation. We wanted to blur the lines between the systems as much as possible, making the gameplay as responsive as possible. Of course, as I said, we wanted to return the game to its stealth roots, and really focus on that. Splinter Cell's always been known for its systemic gameplay as well, so player choice was going to be a huge thing, and then we knew that there was going to be a lot of animation that was going to have to support. But ultimately, at its core, Splinter Cell's about manipulating the AI, and the team wanted to excel in Blacklist and push this further than any other Splinter Cell had done before, and all those behaviors were going to need an absolute ton of animation support as well. Okay, so this was my first time as the animation director on Splinter Cell. So I wanted to define a couple of key pillars that I could help with the team. So I defined that as basically as Panther and realism. I find it useful sometimes to connect a character to an animal. And the meaning behind Panther was to make Blacklist Sam as fluid as possible, kind of very cat-like. This was an idea that was used in Conviction, but I just wanted to take it one step further. And with realism, I wanted to make sure that the world was aware of everything and vice versa. Grounding the player and each other to like tactile moments and some cool stuff like that. I split these pillars into 3 parts. The first one being Prowl. I wanted to take the concept of the Panther through to navigation and giving Sam intent in all his moves. Like kind of a hunter, like stalking its prey, that sort of thing. So there's a very kind of cat-like theme there. I use cat references a lot, by the way. Making sure that all the moves flow together. Surgical Strike. Now this would refer to Sam's combat style. I wanted all his moves to have precision, and I wanted them everything to have a reason. I didn't want to just have random strikes and just wasteful stuff. I wanted everything to, like if you hit someone in the stomach, I wanted them to go down so you could actually do something with it. And the last one was Response. And Response was important because with all these potential animation improvements and like slinky animation that I wanted to do, it didn't matter if it didn't respond. It's like when you push the input, you want that to feel good and you want it to feel like you're Sam Fisher. That's going to really embody the Panther. Okay, and with realism, it was about Sam and the enemies having an awareness of the world around them, as I said. I wanted everything to feel very tactile. I think I'd just seen Children of Men, and there was lots of like touching of walls and all this sort of stuff. And I was obsessed with like grounding the character to that. It's like I wanted the AI to communicate visually. I didn't just want them to have audio barks. I wanted them to actually be signaling to each other. Whether the player was going to see that, I didn't really care. It was more of I just wanted them to be communicating. And with all that awareness, it wouldn't be much fun if everything wasn't reactive. So Sam and the AI would need to be visually reacting different to each other. I wanted people to react to explosions. I wanted to be able to fire a gun in the air, and then that would actually cause chaos. And some of these subtle responses were going to be the fun in how we played. Okay, mood videos were created to support all those sub-pillars. What I wanted to do is to show the team like a concept of all those pillars together. So we didn't have the time or the resources to create, again, a fully rendered video to kind of show anything. So I was given 2 days to basically create this from scratch. So I'm going to show you this. This is the first concept for Blacklist that I created. And it's to try and show some of the things I've been talking about, where when he was coming out from cover, he was touching the wall, he was going up behind someone, taking them down with a knife and using the gun. And also I wanted to keep everything nice and fluid, so I wanted all the transitions to be nice and smooth. So you can see Sam nice and efficiently taking out a bunch of guys there. Okay, so the good thing about that is the team was on board with where I wanted to go, so they wanted to see where I went next. The thing is gameplay needed to try and cast their own Sam Fisher. We needed reference for ourselves as well. And I'm a huge believer in gathering as much real-world knowledge and reference as possible. I was really keen on finding someone that embodied our Sam Fisher. But the problem is where do you find the world's most elite spy? Well, it turns out he lives in Montreal. This is Kevin Secor. He was introduced to me by one of our designers, James Everett, and he'd been training with him when he was living in Montreal, and he was like, hey, you should probably go and speak to this guy. He's got some of the things that you're talking about. And as you can see from Kevin's CV, he's definitely got a lot of combat experience, but I wasn't quite sure whether he was going to fit the bill. So I sent him an email, and I had no idea what I was getting myself into. So this is the video, or part of the video, that Kevin sent me back. And as you can see, it proves to me that he's got a very interesting way of moving. This guy, to me, is the real deal. He's not someone playing at things. He's never done a mocap shoot before, and he kind of lives this. So this is like loads of footage from him just beating people up in his dojo for me. So yeah. Anyway, so I was convinced I had to meet him. He sent me an email. I went to meet him in Montreal. And you know, it turns out he's a huge Splinter Cell fan, so we were kind of like sending emails back and forth quite a lot with redacted lines in there that people can't see. But then the cool thing is every time I sent him an email, he's actually an instructor as well. So he would always send me back a little video. So so his students must absolutely hate me now. But you can see a bunch of stuff on here. You've got, like, I think the bottom right-hand corner, he was talking about how to beat someone up with a shield. And then there's lots of weird stuff on there. There's basically, every time I asked him something, he'd send me back one of these. So he started to prove to be a huge inspiration to the team, not only for me, but to design as well. So this was going to be a great find for us. But I'd mentioned briefly to Kevin that we wanted to bring back the knife from previous Splinter Cells. In previous Splinter Cells, they'd used just a normal straight edge blade, but I wanted to create something a little bit more iconic. So I mentioned to him that I was looking for this. Kevin's eyes just kind of lit up, and he's just like, "Oh, I've got something for you." Okay. So he took me to one side, and he basically pulled out the Karambit. This ended up being kind of like an epiphany moment for me. It's like the Karambit is more of a tool. It's more of a curved edge blade, and it can be used for kind of ripping, pulling, tearing, rending, that sort of thing. And it could actually be used to pull people into cover, which is really cool. And the thing is when I went to his dojo, he created this this chart on the side, which would show you how you could suppress someone, which was really scary that he thought this deep into it. But he decided to like just show me all these things. And this was going to change exactly how we animated these moves, and one of the moves that was there, I will go into in a little bit more detail. Oh, and bonus points, the fact that I've been talking about the cats and everything, is its nickname is the Panther's Claw. I was just like, all right, that's pretty cool, that works. So, okay, oh, and there you go, it connects to my first pillar, the surgical strike. There you go, connections, it's good. Okay. So with that, I was really convinced that we'd found our Sam, so much so that I sent a not-so-cryptic Facebook message to the team, which was very public at the time, considering no one knew I was working on Splinter Cell. But that's fine. Didn't get into trouble for it, so it's okay. Okay. So we blacklist massive scope, and we had this mantra internally of the biggest Splinter Cell to date. It would require a huge investment in our tools and our pipeline. Now, small disclaimer, none of these tools and techniques are particularly magic bullet or groundbreaking. It's more of, they're well known to the industry. It's more of how we use them together that I feel is really powerful. And without them, many of the choices and decisions that we made wouldn't have been possible. Okay, so I spoke with our creative director to see where his head was at. He basically said more of everything. I was like, great, fantastic. The problem with more of everything is something's got to give, right? We knew that it was near impossible to keep the massive scope, ship on time, and the quality level we're aiming for. Usually you have to focus on two of these choices. I asked him which ones are more important to him. All three, brilliant. So, so this was Max throwing the gauntlet down. It was fair enough. It was early on in the project. He didn't see any need to cut anything, and he was just like, just see what we can do. So it was essential, but you know, of course, it was essential that everything was done on time. We didn't want to compromise on quality, and he wasn't really willing to get rid of the scope. So go. Okay, so this is just a quick overview on some of the things that we wanted to add from Conviction on Blacklist. I just want to give you some of the examples of the things that we're adding. So we were going to add like a different movement speed. I think Conviction had only had the 2 movement speeds. We were going to add like a jog in the middle, and we wanted to make the run a lot faster. We'd also we felt strongly that we wanted to have like a lethal and non-lethal option, really kind of playing into player choice. We didn't know what we were going to do with it at the time, but we knew we wanted to have it. Also, there was a bunch of new abilities. I don't know how well you can see on there, but there's things like there was like ladder climbing, ledge jumping, and some of these things. Some made it in the game, some didn't. Also, yeah, we wanted to really focus on how crouch navigation was working as well, because we knew that players were going to be using that a lot. And finally, there was a bunch of new AI archetypes that we were going to add. So all of this was going to need animation support, and this was all on top of things that were already there. Okay, so just to give you a quick idea, Conviction's animation budget was about 40 meg. So I don't know how much that means to anyone, but that's a decent amount. You can normally get quite a lot done with that. So I was like, great. Considering the scope, if we get that for Blacklist, then we'll be fine. But we got 23. So how are we going to do that? Okay, so what I wanted to do is I knew that we needed mocap, just due to the sheer amount of animation we're going to need. We knew that we were going to invest in a solid mocap pipeline. Mocap would allow us to keep as much of the integrity of Kevin's moves as possible, and when it wouldn't be possible to mocap, we'd need strong animators to help prototype systems, because mocap wasn't always going to be the solution. You know, sometimes they need to animate some of the more difficult systems, some of the things that we didn't want to go to mocap with that we might end up getting sued over. Also, I knew we'd need to improve the animation tools. The tools were already existing and were functional for all the previous games. But we knew that to reach the level of quality and to do everything on time and just to get everything in, we knew we were going to have to work on like increased animator control so animators could play around with things and really try and experiment. And we also knew we were going to have to somehow find massive memory savings. Okay, and of course the scope didn't just apply to the animation team. Every team had this mandate. So every team we're going to have to add more, so they all had to go through the same sort of problems. Okay. At Ubisoft, we were really lucky that, that headquarters saw to invest in us as like a center for performance capture. We actually asked for like a smaller system, but then Montreal was getting so booked up with all their mocap shoots that they said, well, we'll just build you a studio. I mean, that's great, but we didn't want to waste it. I mean, gameplay shoots for me have different objectives from cinematics. The focus shifts between the aesthetic, how it might feel to play, and the technical constraints that are involved. Our moves need to look good from all angles at all times. What I like to do is I like to focus. I don't like to have too many people on set. But basically, for me to run a gameplay shoot, I like to keep things nice and simple. So over the past 14 years, there's been some simple guidelines that I like to follow. Okay, as I said, I like to limit the number of people on set at one time. I find that if a set is too busy, you get distracted. Keeping the numbers down helps keep everyone focused. Everyone knows their role. Usually that would mean myself directing. We'd have our team lead basically keeping hold of like the Excel sheet and making sure that we got all the shots. And she would always offer a really valuable second opinion. Of course, you got the actors, usually two. And we'd usually invite like one or two animators onto the stage as well. Just if they were going to be working with those moves, just so they could understand where the intention and everything was coming from. Because if we just gave them the moves, then they might lose some of the aesthetic. It seems obvious, but everyone on set needs to know who's directing. And, you know, I like to be the alpha. So it's like I'll be on set. The actors need to know as well. It helps keep the vision clear. They know that they can go to you if they have any issues, and you know you don't really want people kind of chiming in with opinions all the time because again things get really confusing. So it's always good to kind of filter things through one person. Something I found that worked really well with Kevin was collaboration. To me, that's the key to success with working with mocap, especially for gameplay shoots. Is I like to work with goals in mind, not necessarily a direction. Sometimes I'll have a very clear idea of what I want, and then we'll work with that. But more often than not, if I have like a goal like, okay, you start here, you end there, do something in the middle, and make it look badass, then Kevin more often than not came up with something that worked. Okay, with that said, you need to be respectful of your talent. I mean, there's no point in, there's no point in having your actors working on like crouch moves all morning where it's going to kill their legs, and then you go, oh yeah, by the way, in the afternoon we're going to have you beat someone up. Then that's not going to work. It's going to, unless you want them to look tired when they do it, then it's not going to work. To me, if a particular move is giving you trouble, move it around. You know, move on to the next one. It's going to get your actors frustrated. It's going to get the people on set frustrated. It's like you can always come back to it later, and you never know. It's like, you know, it's like almost like you're sleeping on it. You'll have a better idea of what you want to do. And personally, I like to go to mocap with an almost impossible list of moves that I'm looking for. So I like if I manage to capture everything I need, I let the actors kind of play with some of the things that I need to do in the afternoon, and we actually got some really cool stuff from that. as well. So, and some ideas that may end up just ending in the game that you didn't actually think of. Okay, so this stage became our playground, with Kevin becoming kind of the one constant on set. But we found to get the most out of Kevin, we had to employ a stunt guy that would work. Originally, we had Kevin come in with one of his guys from the dojo, but the problem is he knew Kevin so well that he was anticipating everything and wouldn't show any pain, so the data looked terrible. So we got a guy in that had no idea who Kevin was. That was a very interesting first meeting, especially considering Kevin's never been on set before. He doesn't know what half speed is. Kevin just goes, boom, at it. So if these guys didn't know how to take a hit, then we could have been in trouble. So I want to show you a quick kind of compilation of one of the shoots that we did. So that's Kevin Secor. I had to deal with that guy every day for 3 years. Anyway, so the cool thing is we're starting to get into the meat of things now. Is we get this data, what do we do with it? Now the things with Kevin, again, with it being the first time him being on set, he didn't really know how to sell an action. He didn't really know what it was going to look like in game. So as you can see on the left, it's the raw mocap. It looks pretty cool. You can see what's going on. I think it's like a kidney attack or something. But on the right is what we did to it. And you can see that we've kind of accentuated some of the lines. We've made things a little bit more aggressive. We've cleaned up the feet. We've made things look a little bit, they've got a lot more impact. I mean, we keep everything on the move as well. And this was kind of typical to what we do to some of the animations. The thing is this particular move is Kevin did it at such a speed that we hardly had to do anything to it except for just accentuate it. So the timing was there. So again, it's kind of crazy. So I'm going to give you kind of a breakdown on one of the particular moves that we decided to add for Blacklist. We called them abductions. They were seen as cover takedowns, and they fitted really, really well with the stealth routes of Splinter Cell. So some of the choices we made for abductions were we wanted to be able to pull people into cover or dispatch them really quickly, hide when they were in cover as well. So here is the raw data from one of the moves. And it's pretty cool, but the thing is we can't put that in game. I mean, what we do is we do put that in game, but then we feel how slow it is and how it slows down the gameplay and it doesn't really work. To me, it lacks a bit of impact as well. I mean, Kevin was good, but he couldn't get the sort of impact that we needed, because otherwise we would have gone through stunt guys like Candy. See, to me, there's some broken contacts in there as well. The hands don't connect properly, messy foot positions. It's a little bit too slow, and I knew I wanted to amp it up. So then we give it to an animator, and then we usually, after about a week, they come back with this. And again, there's some more aggression on there. It's like really smashing the head down, pulling them into cover with a lot more aggression, dropping the weapon. So this was starting to work. So what we'd also do is we'd fix shoulder and neck positions, because we find that usually from mocap is the shoulders would always be really high or the necks would be forward. And also we wanted the move to kind of fit within 5 seconds at the maximum, and even that was pushing it. So once we did that, we'd add one extra layer. And one of the things that I really wanted to do is I wanted Sam to be aware of everyone all the time. So now all the animators have gone through and animated this, really cool animation. I decided I didn't want to show it. So we animated the cameras to focus on other things. So it was kind of, you could have all this animation in the background, but then the camera would be looking somewhere else. So that also connected to our surgical strike, response and awareness. So again, I'm connecting everything back around. This is really cool. So as you can see, it's like, well, if you can see because it's quite dark, you've got a guy passing in the background, you've got all the animation happening. The thing is the camera control could be interrupted at any point. So that was where the animator work would be seen. This kind of idea stuck with something we call one step ahead. So we wanted Sam to always be looking at his next target. Once he had something in his hands, then that was it, he was over. And this was actually something that came from Kevin. Kevin never really looked at what he was doing, he was always looking at the next thing. So this would take the animator about a week, and I think that by the time towards the end of the project they managed to be able to do one of these in about a day. Okay, so one of the other things that we did is we had this thing that we called the variety node. And it would basically allow us to create non-standardized loops. It was like one big long sequence of animation that we could use as a base, and it meant that Sam could be here. This was in one of the levels in London where he was poisoned. So spoilers if you haven't played the game. And we wanted him to stagger around. I had all these ideas for him kind of leaning against walls and vomiting, and you know, it's like I really wanted him to throw up for some reason. So this was only possible with the variety node. But the cool thing about this is that would be used over an existing set of animation. So we could just have our base movement set and just replace like 6 or 7 animations. And all we'd have to do is mark them up as A, B, C, D, etc., and then the engine would see them and then play them in sequence. It also meant that we could, if we were clever, we could play around with that sequence and create like any number of randomish sequences. Okay, replacements was also another thing for us as well. This scene from the very, very beginning of the game was actually just replacing a couple of animations from Sam's base walk set with no weapon in his hand. And it meant that all we had to do was, again, create a few animations and we got the rest for free. The design team really wanted to show Sam kind of gradually getting better as he was walking. You know, so we wanted to show him really injured at the beginning, and originally this was going to be like, oh my god, it's going to be like a massive animation set and we can't do it. And we managed to do this. Cool little story with this is me in a mocap suit. I got injured the day before. And I think I tore my calf muscle, and I quickly ran into the well, not quickly. I got into the mocap. I got into the mocap suit, and then I was like, well, let's go and get it. So then this came back, and that's actually, for all posterity, is me injured. So there you go. So I was the very first actor to play Sam Fisher in Splinter Cell Blacklist. Fact. Okay. So everything was going great. And then Mike Wasilewski, our lead gameplay programmer, and that's a Movember picture, by the way, came up to me and said, okay, we need to talk. We're running out of space. I'm like, oh, okay, all right, fine. It's like, so he basically threatened to start cutting things. It's like, we've got a budget, and you're not sticking with it. You're just adding stuff, and yeah, it looks great and everything, but we're not going to be able to ship like this. So they were all the words I needed, and he was basically saying that I couldn't have all my toys, and basically I was like, if you wanted your toys back, you had to tidy your room. So this was the animation. This was basically an overview of where the animation budget was. I think it was like August 2012. We had a budget of 23, and before I'd added a load of other stuff, we were already at 34. So we knew we were going to have to find savings somewhere. So we worked on this tech, basically animation bundles. Again, this isn't any secret to the industry, but they were essential to how we used animation in Blacklist. Up until this point, all animation had been loaded into memory at once. So what we wanted to do is we would split systems into smaller packages. And you know, we could have these smaller packages such as like cover and Sam's navigation and like doors and moving body, and these were things that we knew we were going to need at any time in the game. But then what we did is we'd also load packages such as we could also load things that we would or wouldn't need for a certain map. So we knew that maybe in one map we wouldn't need a climb system, or we knew we weren't going to need ladder navigation. So we could then strip that out and then put that on the disk, and then it could be loaded in as and when we needed it. Also, we could load certain packages on the fly. Things like lethal and non-lethal, that was actually a toggle. So you could play that in the game, and you could, it would essentially pause the game. And because the loading was really quick, it gave us an opportunity to load out the lethal and bring in the non-lethal. We could also do things like riot shield as well, because we didn't use that much. And fast rope, again, it's like we didn't use that much, so we could load that in, and that was absolutely fine. Overall, this simple organization, I think, saved us around 6 meg, which is huge. It doesn't sound big, but it is. It's impressive. It's like that almost deserves a clap, but I'm not going to ask for one. No. It's fine. It's okay. It's okay. Anyway, okay. So the cover system in Splinter Cell Conviction was really good. Was actually really efficient for what it was, but was so complicated. We wanted to reuse it, but we found that what we could do is we could just mirror half of it. So we stripped out, I think, the right-hand side and just pressed the mirror button, which we added. Again, there's a lot more complication to how that tech came about, but as an animator, it was mirror, and that was it. So the good thing about that is we could just replace, using the replacements and everything, we could just throw in an animation if we needed it. Say, for example, if he wanted to do something with his right hand and he's over on the other side, it was really easy to put something else in. So again, this saved us around 4 meg, so already that's 10 meg we've saved. So Mike starts to smile again, puts his gun down. And also, for us, layers were huge. I'm not going to go too in depth of what layers are, because I'm going to kind of assume that some people talk about it, and there is other talks today talking about layers. So I don't want to teach a grandmother to suck eggs. But for us, we'd have our base animation. This was our one-handed animation, and then what we could do is we could quite easily add just a weapon layer of just some jiggling arms that looked like he was kind of running, and then we'd add that over, and then we'd get that animation. This basically meant that we could cut two-handed as a base animation set, and we got it for free. So this basically took me a weekend to do, and then and we got rid of, I think it was 6 meg in a weekend, and so already that is 16 meg that we've got rid of. So again, Mike's really happy at this point. And the cool thing was that it kind of stuck with the whole idea of prowling and response as well, and it basically meant that I didn't have to work on 3 animation sets. I didn't have to work on zero-handed, so where they haven't got a weapon in the hand. I didn't have to work on one-handed or two-handed. I only had to work on one of those sets and then use layers to kind of help us out. So using all these together would actually be really useful. Okay, so at the end of that, after a quick spring clean, with the biggest savings, I think we're in navigation, due to the extensive use of layers, the cover system because of the mirroring, and we managed to make a dent into our AI behaviors again with some of the variety node and the layers as well. So we ended up getting a more reasonable number of about 17 meg. We were down to the bare bones now. But the cool thing is I could now have my toys back. So Mike handed me the keys, and they're all the numbers. I'm just going to show you animation from now on now. Okay, so one of the things I became a little obsessed with was I wanted to keep Sam on the move pretty much at all time. I love this kind of concept, I wanted to use it through everywhere. So I'm going to kind of describe what it is. The idea was to keep as much inertia going through animations as possible. Improving how fluid Sam was and blurring the line between the systems, as I said. Locomotion, traversal, hand to hand. I didn't want him to stop. I didn't want to have to go up to something, push a button, and then it happened. I wanted you to be able to think on the fly, and like an elite spy, and like Kevin does, I wanted you to be able to act, not stop, and just carry on. So I put this video together, and it's things like, when we're landing, you can see how out of control he is, and you can see that they'll take the landing through the run. And like Bond here was a great reference for me. And just from the way that he was always kind of just continuing to move, and always, I loved the whole idea of having his hand down when you're jumping down from things. I didn't want him to be all parkoury. I was looking for something a little bit more raw and a bit more cat-like. So then we went to mocap, and we basically got another guy, a guy called Stéphane Julien, and he's done a bunch of mocap for a bunch of other Ubisoft projects, but we got him to just play around in the space. You know, we set up a bunch of obstacles and said, right, I want you to go from here to there as quick as you possibly can. Use whatever you need to do it, and we'll work with it afterwards. So at this point, we didn't really know what we were trying to capture. We just knew that we wanted to capture something nice and fluid. And the whole idea is we were going to try and put it all together. So then, very quickly, we managed to start to see some of the animation together. This was very early. Again, it's like this was before we cleaned up some of the animation. We just broken it down in its raw form, and you can start to see that some of the lines kind of keep nice and clean. He's always on the move, whereas before he would have gone up to these positions, stopped, stepped up, stopped again, and then carried on. We were keeping everything on the move. Some of the things that we wanted to do is we wanted to make sure that this worked for walk, jog, and run sets. We also made sure that we wanted to connect everything to crouch, so you could be at any position at any time and then just dynamically change the crouch, and then it would absorb more of the impact. You know, so there you can see he's putting his hand down, and it started to work really, really well, so we're really happy with this. Okay. And again, that was connected to the whole Panther idea of prowl. It was really responsive, and it felt really tactile, and again, it was, you know, it was reactive to the world. So we wanted to maintain the momentum through to hand-to-hand. So we first created a moving version of all of Sam's hand-to-hand moves. So as you can see, you'll just kind of, you know, take the guy down, minimal movement, put him down nice and quietly. It looks really cool. The problem with this is it lacked precision. So we went and created a static version of these moves as well. So the thing is this is effectively the same move because it's an attack from behind. But depending on the proximity of the character you were, or depending on how close the stick was, or how much you were pushing the stick, would play one of these. I think if you were at a walk speed, we'd play the static one, and if you were anything above that, then it would take the inertia through with the moving. So here you can see the difference. So, and again, connections to prowl and to surgical strike, because this was, you know, nice and precise the way everything's working. And again, it was really responsive. So we proved this worked really well for hand-to-hand, and it's clear we wanted to take it even further. So we developed a few systems that would encourage the players to play stealthy. We wanted to show Sam's awareness of his surroundings, and in turn the AI's perception of Sam. It was extremely important that we showed Sam actively acting stealthy, and Kevin was really cool at basically knowing about his surroundings. He used to talk about using his hands like whiskers. Again, the cat references kept coming back, but he'd always have his hand out and he'd be like touching the wall, and he'd never really be looking at anything, and it worked really, really well. He used to do things where he'd like cover like his tracks, like with his hand behind him as well, which worked really nice, but we didn't put that in again. So anyway, this resulted in our animation contrast system, and it would allow animation to change dynamically depending on the situation Sam found himself in. We wanted to focus the attention on 3 key areas. So again, hand-to-hand navigation and the AI awareness. This would involve creating unique animations for all of Sam and the AI whenever their awareness level would change. And this would change dynamically as we were playing. So again, we're going to have to throw in a load more animation. But it could very quickly explode if we didn't control it. Okay, so we wanted to add combat and stealth variants of everything. And hand-to-hand was the easiest way to prove the concept, and decided to start with our cover takedown mechanics, as I said, abductions. So here we've got a combat version of a move, and what would happen is, to me this was about threat suppression. What would happen is if an AI was aware of if an AI was aware of you, then they would play this animation. And then we had stealth, which was more to me about sound suppression. It was if the AI wasn't aware, it's about bringing you into cover and then just hiding you. So here you can see these 2 moves. It's essentially the same move. It's all the same criteria. The only thing that changes is the AI awareness state. These moves would be called automatically, and it started to work really, really well for us. And again, connecting. I love the connections. So it's like you've got the awareness, you've got surgical strike, and you've got reactive, and everything's really tactile, so there's lots of touching there. Okay, but the criteria for this, again, to kind of give you a context into how many animations were involved in this, is we'd choose the cover type. So the cover type would be whether it was like a side cover or whether it was an over cover. So that would be 2 animations. Then on top of that, it would be the cover direction, so it would be whether you were facing left or right. Then they'd be taking into account the AI orientation, whether it was facing forward, away from you, and towards you. Then it would be the lethal and non-lethal choice. And on top of that would be the combat or stealth. So add it all together, 32 animations, unique. Doesn't sound like a lot, but when you think each one of those animations takes a day to a couple of days to animate, then that's just the tip of the iceberg. Yeah, so that's those 2 unique animations. But we didn't want to stop there, so we wanted to apply this to open combat as well. So we had the lethal and non-lethal choice. The lethal would be using the karambit, and the non-lethal would be using hands, so it'd be like chokeouts and everything, things like that. Lethal was usually quicker, so again, the player could choose to do that. And it would kind of be more for the Panther or Assault player, which is some of the play styles we talked about. And like non-lethal would be for more the stealthy player. So here you can see them together, and again, essentially this is the same move. It's just it's a criteria that we would choose. It's like, so we chose to do the non-lethal version of this. So all of these had to be dynamically loaded in game, and again, it was really kind of going back to the player choice. So all of these would have either a static version or a moving version. The direction attack would be taken into account, whether it was you were in front, or the left, or the right, or behind them. Again, the lethal and non-lethal choice, or the combat or stealth. So there's 32 animations there. Add that to the 64, so already we start to explode. But we're not done. So there's also the aerial takedowns that we call death from aboves. The contextual takedowns, so they could be anything from like pulling people out over a ledge, hitting them against the wall, various other things. And also we decided to add a hand-to-hand finisher to the mark and execute system. So there you go. Altogether, there's 98 unique animations that could be called at any point, at any time, and we had to fit them into memory. If anyone's seen, if there's a video everywhere out there about all 98 takedowns, I'd be very interested to see it. Okay, but by far the animation seen the most will be Sam's navigation. So it's clear we need to apply the same attention to the basic navigation controls. And early on in development, we questioned the use of basically a manual crouch. Players were staying in crouch all the time. So we looked at removing the actual option to not. So we played around with the idea with the automated crouch, and it kind of worked. You know, and it gave again, cat references, it gave the idea of Sam being stealthy. And it was a great way to show Sam's awareness of his surroundings. You know, again, it kind of embodied some of the stuff that Kevin was doing, and it would really make it look like Sam was aware of his surroundings. But the problem is by removing the ability to manually crouch, players would get spotted, and they wouldn't be able to control it. And to be honest with you, it just made him look like he was scared all the time. Because as soon as you got near to an enemy, you just ducked down. It just looked weird. But I really liked how it worked. You know, there was something about this system that I thought was really useful. So we kept the idea. We still kept the stand and the crouch, but then we just kept the criteria. So all we did is we did this first test. And you can see with this first test is all we did is as soon as you got into cover, then he just reached and put his hand back on the knife. That's all he did. So, you know, if there wasn't an AI there, he wouldn't do that. But then if he was, he just reached his hand back on the knife. And he was like, okay, that works. That's really cool. We thought that was pretty successful. But, you know, we just didn't want to do it whenever he was static. It's my whole obsession with everything in motion. We wanted to make him aware and reactive at all times. So basically that turned into what we called closer than ever. So here you've got like the base animation set, and this would be, if no one was around, Sam would just be crouching all the time, and it would kind of look cool. And again, there'd be a stand variant of this. But then what we wanted to do is dynamically, as you got closer to the enemy, Sam would start to look a bit more stealthy. And this would blend in over time. So the closer you got, the more stealthy he'd look. And then also, as you got really close, He'd reach back, put his hand on the knife, and finish. So each one of these was starting to show Sam's awareness level to AI and everything, and we really liked how this was working. And this was actually an old system from a previous Splinter Cell that had been commented out, and we decided to kind of bring it back and like freshen it up and do this to it. So that was everything all put together, and you can start to see that all the ideas that we're looking at starting to come together. So that's going to bring me to our AI behavior. And to me, so one of the very first things I said to our lead AI programmer was, to me, Splinter Cell was about, I'm not going to say the actual word I used, but to me, Splinter Cell was about manipulating the AI. And I was obsessed with, making the AI do whatever you wanted to do and kind of, like showing them this over here and then you going over there. And I thought it worked really well for stealth. And to me, AI communications and interactions were going to be a strong focus. Reactions to everything happening in the world were going to be huge. And it was important to show that the AI were going to be going around their everyday lives. And it's something that Jalil was talking about earlier, was everything happening before and after an event. And I wanted to show people going about the middle part. So this is some of the things that we put in there. I had this thing where I didn't want people to, for stealth games, everyone always has their back to you. And I'm like, that doesn't work for me. So I wanted them to have a reason to have their back to you. So I did things like washing their face, nice and simple. Like loading boxes, again, it seems pretty obvious. Peeing was always a good one. And the thing is something that I found that I used to do when I was ever on the phone was I'd walk around and I wasn't focusing on anything else, I'd just be distracted. And I thought that was a really good thing. So you could see like there, we'd have the range of everything. So again, I'd have like, have the guys kind of like playing games when they're doing it. And again, I just wanted the AI to look a little bit more friendly instead of these guys that had no lives. I wanted you to think, oh, maybe I shouldn't kill him. He might have to go home to his wife or something. But, that didn't really ever happen. Okay, so one of the very first things that we worked on was impact. And we found that, because we wanted to improve the gunplay in Blacklist, and we found that the final bullet impact wasn't quite working. Everyone would go to ragdoll a little bit too early, and it wouldn't quite fit. So the very first thing we did was remove the blend. This straight away gave us snap. So we started with basically the final bullet impact. That was the very first thing I wanted to work on. I wanted to end on the end. I wanted to start on the end, because I felt that the further, kind of like Leon in The Professional, is like, the further you get, or is it the closer you get, the better you are. I wanted to do the opposite. I wanted to basically, start with the death and then kind of work my way back. And I felt that these are the things that the players were going to see when they were looking down the barrel of a gun, or whether they were watching someone, or whether they were observing. Adding snap was important. We wanted that kind of violent reaction of a bullet, and we really wanted bullets to mean something. And basically, I think we had the blend to about like maybe 2 frames, something like that, but it really worked. We also added a bunch of animations for directions. So this whole idea of everything in motion went through to the deaths as well. So we start to take into account criteria such as where you're getting shot, the speed you're getting shot when you actually get shot, the direction you get shot from, and stuff like that. And this was really simple. It was like, this was basic stuff, but really started to make, this was before we did anything else to the guns. We just changed the AI reactions. That already started to make everything feel really, really good. Okay, so the thing is with reactions as well is I felt that there was like an untapped kind of area that we could really focus on. Is like I was fine with our pre-combat animations looking great. They'd already looked really good in Conviction, and I didn't want to break that. and the combat worked, but I was obsessed with that transition in the middle. I used to liken it to when you're playing with your sister. It's like the fun part is when she's scared. It's not the actual part where she goes and tells your mum. So, so yeah. So we added things like double takes. We added all these other things. And I want to show you basically this simple manipulation. It's a problem working in a game that is all about stealth is you can't see anything, it's always black. But yeah, the whole idea was I wanted to be able to distract someone from somewhere, they reacted in a certain way, and I wanted that reaction to be believable. I didn't want them to be just going, oh my god, just been shot. I wanted them to kind of just, nice and subtle, go over and investigate, and then something happened. So this was kind of building up an ecosystem, and it's basically, I want to kind of finish off with like a chain of events. So I'm just going to go straight into it. So I want you to...
Do you need help with that? ماشي. أنا جاي وراك. أعتقد إنك ذكي وأنت مستخبي هناك. أوكي، أنا جاي لك.
So I don't know whether you could see that there, but the AI was banging on the door, and then in the middle of the banging, we blew out the light bulb. They kind of react nice and subtly, go over, communicate to another guy, and then he goes, hey, don't worry about it, it's just a light bulb, go back to your job. So the thing is we could play with that. So what we did is distract him again.
Hey there, you did.
So again, I don't know whether you could see that, but he distracted him in the middle. And because this was the second time, the AI remembered the first time and then would react and come towards you. We pulled him out the window, which would then create suspicion. So now we create suspicion. You can see that the AI went to investigate. We're going to start to create fear. And again, we can play with this. The AI realized something was wrong, and the reaction is fear, but maybe we can use this to our advantage.
This guy's still breathing?
Cool. So now we've managed to scare him. Then the AI started to see this. They're going to start to communicate with each other. And by creating more panic, they're forced to up the ante.
I see multiple bodies. Everyone, spread out and search.
Come here and help me search.
So the cool thing is now they've got their back naturally turned towards you, and then we can do something with that. So there you go. We could have completely avoided those guys, but the whole thing is for us, we really wanted to keep these subtle reactions. If you want to hear more about the AI and everything, there's Martin Walsh is talking here on Wednesday at 2:35, and I'm sure he'll go into a little bit more depth than I will. So I want to close with basically my points. To me, it's really important to find your muse. Kevin was invaluable to some of the decisions and everything we made, and without him, we wouldn't have been able to do some of the things that we did. It's like I always like to try and find reference for as much as possible. And if you've got someone to bounce off, then that's really, really going to help. It's going to, so that's something I like to do. To me, embracing optimization early would have helped us more. We managed to get away with it, but then if we'd really optimized early on, we could have maybe added even more. And no matter how big your memory budget is with the next generation of consoles, there's going to be a cap. So you've always got to think smart. And of course, for me, we're making games. Gameplay is king. This was something said in Mariel's talk this morning. Is again, you can have all this slinky cat-like animation, but if it doesn't respond and it responds like a dog, then it's not going to feel like a cat. So, so yeah, so that's my main thing, and that's my talk. I think we've run out of time. I don't know. Yeah, I'm getting a nod that we've run out of time. I'm going to be at the Ubisoft Lounge tomorrow morning at 10 if people want to ask me, or I'm going to be hanging around if people want to ask me questions. And there's my details if people want to stalk me or send me weird emails and stuff. I'm fine with that. So yeah, go for it. Thank you very much.